Rightio, it's about time we got around to another Chinese daily trainer review with the Bmai Expedition 6 or Ranger 6 or March 6. I've seen a few different names. I know it as the Expedition. It's from Bmai and it is a lovely daily trainer. It's taken me a bit of time to get Ks into this one. I've had a bit of an injury rolling through, so we've finally ticked over 60 Ks and I feel confident to give my rundown top to bottom, price point, and then we'll get into a few loose comparisons as well to help you understand whether this is the one for you or whether there's others out there which could do a better job. Starting off with specs, as always, a little bit tricky to get my hands on. I've come across numbers suggesting that this has a 35mm stack in the heel with a 7.5mm drop down to the forefoot. I would say the drop feels on point, but as with a lot of other shoes, I'm not so sure on the stack height measurements. I do think it feels taller. For my size 10, I would suggest we're looking at somewhere close to 39 or even 40mm of foam, I do feel. I'm not sure whether they don't measure it with the insole in or they measure it at a different point. I do think we've got a bit more stack. So my gamble, as I did with the Carbon 3 Turbo, is that we're probably looking at an extra 2 or 3mm on top of the estimate. So maybe 38mm for sample size is a good kind of measurement to give. In terms of the foam here, they're using their Boomfly midsole, which is a supercritical TPU foam, quite a tight-knit, punchy foam, definitely more resilient. It's not necessarily firm, it has a little bit of squish on the surface, but once you get past that, it is quite a deep, resilient rebound, which I found to be a lot of fun so far. Weight-wise, for my men's size 10, with quite a wide base, padded upper, and a full coverage rubber outsole, we're coming in at 283 grams, which I think is pretty decent. That's kind of what I expect from most daily trainers these days, well below 300, so we're doing well. In terms of the upper experience, it has been nice so far. Very comfortable through the heel counter, flared shape there, which has been nice. A lot of stiffness and structure through the back end here, curves right around to the front of the ankle. Gonna be good for those who like that more kind of structured hold back in the heel. The upper mesh is quite thick, really tight woven material, which has been a little bit stuffy so far, hence the white colorway. As we move into summer, it is definitely getting a little bit sweaty, but it is quite comfortable. So winter running, definitely quite good. If you can handle it, I think it's doing okay. Tongue is very padded. Eyelet chain does a really good job. Not a heap of stretch to this upper material, so once you lace it up, I do think you are locked in quite nicely. In terms of sizing, I have gone for a US 10 EU 44, which has worked out really nicely. A little bit of room ahead of the toes and a nice kind of rounded off toe box, which I think should accommodate a lot of different foot shapes. I wouldn't say that this is a wide foot shoe, wider foot, as I would sometimes say. I think we could be looking on. This is along the lines of maybe a little bit of a dialed back Rebel V5 perhaps. I don't want to make any big claims. This is definitely the widest training shoe that I've tried out of any of the Chinese shoes so far. For myself, I found the fit and comfort to be really nice. Lockdown's been really good. I would suggest going true to size if you always go with the same size, maybe a half size down if you sometimes float. So for me, that size 10 has worked okay. Most people, I would say, would be at home with their standard US size. In terms of the midsole foam, this Boomfly Supercritical TPU has been a lot of fun. I wasn't really expecting this from this shoe, just from the look of the midsole and the kind of silhouette. I thought it might be more of that kind of max cushion cruiser. TPU foam, I was expecting something along the lines of a Triumph 20 or maybe an Aeroglide 3 from Salomon, but this has come across a lot more energetic, a lot more punchy, a lot more versatile than I was expecting at first. It isn't the most rocket, but I have found that has given me this kind of nice forefoot sensation, which somewhat reminds me of the Super Blast 2. Don't want to make any big bold claims there, but the kind of wide surface area, the more dense resilient foam, and the kind of bottomless sensation to that cushioning has definitely reminded me a little bit of it in terms of the kind of punch that you can put into the shoe and how it just keeps on giving back and stays pretty good for a long time as well. Taking this past an hour and a half was no worries at all, and so I think this could function as a nice long run shoe for a fair few people as well. In terms of the stability, it's pretty fantastic. Wide base, really structured heel counter, a little bit of midsole sidewalls, but the main thing for me is just how resilient this foam is and the fact that it isn't going to over compress and kind of twist around, which could mean that this is one of the more stable shoes that I've come across this year as well. In terms of the best use case for this shoe, I do still think it is sitting in around that kind of hour easy for me, where I can kind of tick the legs over, maybe push into some up-tempo paces if I want. I'm not so persuaded on using it for easy recovery runs where I think it might be a bit firm for the kind of Western expectations and for a lot of people's expectations for that kind of big, soft, squishy shoe, I would probably be leaning more towards the Chowdown Lei Li. If you're chasing that kind of cruiser, this feels more along the lines of shoes like the Evo SL, Aeroglide 3, which I think are a little bit more versatile, a little bit more punchy, which for me has been a nice, pleasant surprise. It's punchy, it's stable, nice wide base, it doesn't bottom out, it doesn't die out. I anticipate the durability of this foam being quite good. I have been pretty impressed so far. I think that this has been a really nice pickup for a pretty decent price, which we will chat about. In terms of the outsole, we have a full coverage rubber here. They're calling it their Light RS or R8. R8, I'm gonna say. It's quite sticky, it's really grippy, a lot of nubs covering the entire surface. Grip so far has been fantastic. Durability, I would say so far, has been okay as well. 60Ks is not exactly the most thorough testing, but it hasn't shown any of the kind of warning signs that I've seen on a few shoes in my time. I would anticipate the durability of this shoe overall being quite good, taking into account the beaded TPU foam, which is notoriously durable. I think we're going to get some good Ks out of this one compared to some of the softer, more kind of fragile models like the Rebel V5 and the Nova Blast as well. In terms of the price point here in Australia, if you pick it up off AliExpress, you can expect to pay around $170, which I think first off is pretty fantastic. That's cheaper than the Velocity Nitro 4, which I would say is the kind of last real running shoe, I would say, for that kind of price point. SL2 from Adidas as well, it's undercutting those by 10 bucks, which I think is pretty decent, considering the use cases, considering the durability, all that kind of stuff. But if you go on Taobao and you translate stuff and you put in a bit of extra effort, you can pull it down to around, I'm pretty sure 80 to 100 bucks is what I've seen, which is brilliant. Don't need to tell you that, that is fantastic. I think that this has been one of the better finds that I've done so far out of a couple of daily trainers that I've tried. Coming around to comparisons, a little bit tricky here. We don't really have a shoe which is quite in this style. Oftentimes our Western shoes are softer, more rocketed, a little bit more stacked. I think a lot of people want to know how it goes against the Evo SL, which I think is fair. The resilience of the foams I think is quite similar in terms of that kind of density. I do think the punchback from the TPU is a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more of a kind of pop compared to a kind of rebound from the Evo SL. This is much more rocketed, more of a rolling sensation compared to the kind of punchy forefoot up in the Expedition 6. The stability on this one is much better, so that could be a swaying point for some. Lately in store, I've had a few people go past the Evo SL because of the midfoot kind of shaping here, feeling like they're kind of rolling inwards a little bit. This is a much more stable alternative, but I'm not going to lie, this is more versatile with a lighter weight and probably a little bit more rebound in the kind of conventional sense, whereas this is more of a kind of pop, which I think just makes daily training pace feel fun, but wouldn't necessarily inspire me to get into kind of threshold zones like the Evo SL can. I think another good comparison would be the Aeroglide 3 Gravel from Salomon, which I think is quite similar in terms of the TPU foam, more of a kind of flat geometry, not super rocketed. The foam here is much softer, a little bit more compressive. It does still have a pretty healthy rebound, but I do think the overall kind of ride and energy is a bit muted by the Gravel outsole, which is an advantage to be fair. It is great on kind of off-road surfaces, but I do think if you're on the roads, you will find the Bmai to be a little bit more kind of energetic, a little bit more punchy, and a touch more stable as well. I think that the surface area on foot is just a little bit better. The fit, I would say, is a bit roomier from my experience in the Gravel, although I have gone for 10.5 here compared to the 10, so that could be swaying things a little bit. Both really good shoes. I would suggest this if you like a bit softer and you're spending more time on gravel, although there is gravel versions of this shoe or trail versions of this shoe, which I think would be a really good pickup as well. Probably not something I'm going to test, but do keep an eye out for that as well if you want something which is punchy, wide-based with a good bit of grip also. Final one that we could probably compare to, just having a look. Oh, that's a great comparison there. Right, final comparison, and probably the most relevant to be fair, is the Topo Athletic Spectre 2. This has a full P-Bax midsole, a nice wide base underfoot, probably around that same stack height level, and a similar kind of resilient punchy feel without a heap of rockering through the forefoot. Key difference here is that the Topo does have a roomier toe box, which could just be a non-negotiable for a lot of people who are fans of Topo. And the other one, which is pretty key for me, is the outsole durability. The outsole rubber here has not been holding up super well, especially on this outside edge, whereas I feel much more confident in the grip and durability of the Bmai. Both are really good shoes. This is a touch lighter. I would suggest a little bit quicker. I can maybe get into threshold pace with a bit more comfort compared to probably tempo zones, up-tempo daily training paces, but both are very good shoes. In the long run, I think they're most equal, where I might even suggest the Bmai with a bit more of a gutsy feel from the TPU. And yeah, that's pretty much it on the Expedition 6 from Bmai. I've been pretty happy with this one so far. Comfortable upper, poppy midsole, nice stable base, grip that I do think is going to hold up and has been good so far. Good price point of 170 bucks if you just want to go through the kind of more mainstream channel. But if you want to put in the effort, do some auto translating and get on Taobao, 80 bucks or 100 bucks, depending on where you find it, I do think is fantastic value. Pretty happy with this one so far. I would say this has been the most recommendable daily trainer that I've had, probably other than the Lei, which we will chat about soon, but I think this is the more conventional daily trainer, which you can use for a variety of purposes, and it's just going to keep on coming back. Good stuff from Bmai so far. I've been pretty impressed with the models that I've tried. I've got another one in to test out, which I have forgotten the name of. Maybe it's the 42K number 3. I remember trying one of the early versions of this. We're going to get this into test soon as well, as we seem to be coming good with this pesty Achilles. Either way, good stuff. Catch you next time.